Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. Today, we're going to be talking about Raldor. We're going to be talking about everything you need to know about him as a unit in regards to both his abilities, the equipment he needs to use, the VCs. He's a very interesting unit, and I hope y'all are ready to dig in. So Rhaldor is going to be a fire element strike unit. He is not limited. He has a movement 3, jump 2. Primary job is Pugilist, with Paladin and Thief as the other jobs. He does have access to hat, clothes, and accessories, and his TMR is one of the more interesting TMRs in the game. It gives HP 348, and is one of the only TMRs that gives substantial attack. So it does give attack plus 58, defense 8, and accuracy 10. If you're out there looking to stack attack and maybe not using an agility TMR, which, you know, maybe you need to not use an agility TMR, this might be the TMR for you. It does not really have any AP regeneration, though. It does have accuracy plus 30 and move 1 on its ability. Overall, though, it's kind of just a token piece for that attack, and you're probably not really going to be desperately in need of it. His mastery ability does give HP 10% and fire attack 15 for fire allies. He also gets defense penetration 20 for himself. His board stats, not particularly interesting, just basically more defense. Getting defense plus 12 is pretty cool, particularly on your base stats. I'm not sure if there's any other unit in the game that gets that much base defense. He also gets increased attack 20% for himself. He has 20% native ice resistance, he's 10% weak to water, and his resistances are beautiful. He gets 5% slash resistance, 15% pierce resistance, 20% missile resistance, and he is 15% weak to magic. Not only are his resistances to damage and elements nice, he also has really nice status ailment resistances. 50% to confusion, 50% to stop, so Agrius is not going to be able to do anything to him, nor would like a stop Warrior of Light. And of course, 10% to disable on top of that. So even going up against Dwayne's, he's going to have a little bit of an advantage where a lot of units would not. He is literally the Agrius killer, and he is going to be killing a lot of tank units, I'm sure. We can go ahead and take a look at his limit break here. Thanks to Kisang for always posting these and letting us use them and show them off in the video. You can look at those sexy ass abs. You know, from the side, Raldor is actually a very attractive man, but I feel like his sprite could have used a little bit of work. His limit burst is nothing too remarkable. It does have 3 range. It is pretty low cost at only 43 AP. It decreases strike resistance 38% for 3 turns to target, and it deals anywhere between 165 and 200% damage. Again, not the most, you know, crazy limit burst, but pretty interesting. Taking a look at his support abilities, he does get Flurry Enhancement, which upgrades his skill Flurry Counter, and it also gives him 20 accuracy. Gets Holy Knight's Protection for an additional defense 12, HP 12%. So if you're keeping track, if he has that on, that is defense plus 24 right now. Warrior's Spirit, which increases HP 12% and attack 12%. Thief's Lore, which gives agility 12% and move 1. And he does have the acquired AP up from Thief as well. You're probably going to see a mixture of all of these being used because all of them are really good. Now, Flurry Counter is an interesting counter because it's actually a multi-counter hit, or a multi-hit counter, sorry. So not only that, but if you do have the upgrade on it, it is going to have a 50% chance to proc when it's fully leveled. That is the highest percentage rate of a counter ability in the game. Not only that, it's going to be a 165% modifier attack. That is pretty powerful. I do think, though, that you're more likely to see Paladin Guard being set on him than to have Flurry Counter set on him. I think you could see, potentially, depending on what units are in the meta, Flurry Counter be switched to. But I think since a lot of his kind of mechanics are designed around taking and mitigating damage, you're most likely going to see Paladin's Guard on him more often. His main job, Pugilist. This will be our first kind of Pugilist in Global. A Resetsu Strike is going to move him to a target panel and deal damage. Iron Body Stance is going to increase max HP and restore HP raised. So it's going to increase it by 20% and it'll heal him for that amount. And it's going to increase defense by 15 for 3 turns to self. So that's 24 plus 15 would be 39 native defense. Shura's Pummel is a interesting ability because it doesn't hit the enemy directly in front of you. It's kind of off to the sides. It does have a Man-Eater 25x associated with it and 170% modifier. Pretty good there. Now, Demon Purger is probably his most interesting technique. So it's a 210 modifier attack, but it increases the modifier by 75% if the number of times you've received damage is 5. Now, this is kind of the gimmick with Raldor, right? Where he can deal increased damage if he does take damage from other sources multiple times throughout the fight. It's interesting. I don't know how effective it's going to be. I think it definitely leans itself towards sub-Paladin, but I really don't know, and I'm really curious to see how it works out. His secondary buff ability, Pugilist Mastery, gives strike attack plus 40 for 3 turns to allies, and increases defense penetration for 20 for 3 turns to self. I could see this being used instead of Iron Body Stance if you're not wanting to take damage, or if you're wanting to deal damage but not take damage. It's going to be interesting because there's kind of 2 different ways you can build him, which is either for taking hits or for dealing damage, and I'm really curious what direction people are going to go. Now, his sub-ability, Pugilist, has some weird techniques as well. Breathing Technique restores HP 30% for self, and then Spirit Breaker, I know you guys can't see it behind my webcam here, but it increases the modifier by negative 40% if the number of times you have received damage is 5. So it's one of those abilities that is like, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't really understand the ability, right? Like, the ability is really weird, I would say. To read the entire thing to you, increased modifier by negative 40% if the number of times you've received damage is 5. So it's almost like you're living in the opposite type of world, right? Where you don't want to take damage. But then it also has decreases attack 60 to 79% for 3 turns, plus increases modifier by negative 40% if the number of times you've received damage is 5 for the target. So it's a little bit of a confusing attack, and I'm not gonna lie, I've looked it up on both Ultima, and I have looked it up on both WoTV Calc Ultima, and tried to figure out kind of what the nuances of this attack are. I think what's really gonna happen is when he comes out in Global, we're gonna have to look at it, break it down. From what I can tell, I think it's just not worth it, because you're probably gonna be subbing Paladin on him anyway. But definitely something interesting to think about and look at. Sub Paladin, this is probably where you're going to be on Raldor all the time, right? You're probably going to be using Sentinel for that defense 45, spirit 45. You're probably going to be using, you know, Saintly Wall to reduce physical damage taken 50% for 3 turns to self. I did put Blade Bash on in case you are going to be running with slash units. Important note that Blade Bash and Taunting Blade will chain with fire slashing attacks, so will Snipe Dagger from Sub Thief. So you might want to consider that. Personally, I think probably Sentinel and Saintly Wall are the 2 to leave on, and then you just turn off everything else. I did put Blade Bash on, though, because it's Blade Bash, and so the AI is probably smart enough to figure that out. But this is going to enable him to take those hits, which will increase the modifier on his attack, which will hopefully make him do more damage. His last sub-job is going to be Thief. I really don't see you using Thief sub-job on him very often. Again, it's probably only going to be if you're, you know, utilizing slash chaining or fire slash chaining, which is pretty niche in itself. Snipe Dagger, you're probably going to leave on. He does have Steal Time, which is pretty interesting, so you might be utilizing Steal Time. Other than that, you're going to be most likely staying away from this. Now, interestingly enough, he does get his own piece of equipment that comes out, which is Kaiser Knuckles. Now, Kaiser Knuckles as opposed to Mithril Claws, it really depends on if you want agility or damage. Honestly, I think the Kaiser Knuckles really are just better overall because they have plus 80 attack. I would trade the plus 80 attack and plus 2% strike modifier in comparison to the Mithril Claws for the plus 5 agility. But again, you might want to have the Mithril Claws because you never know when you're going to need another piece of gear with agility on it to either adjust or figure him out. For any piece of equipment to put on him for armor, you're going to want high defense. So it's going to be high defense, it's going to be slash resist, missile resist. It's going to lean into his strengths. Important to note though, in the next tower we do get the fire ring, so you will be able to put the fire ring on him. And for TMRs, you can equip Thancred's TMR for light resistance in the future. You could also equip like Ayaka's TMR, you know, any TMR that gives agility plus. Ziza's bells, great option. The only option really for agility or for AP up, sorry, is going to be Ziza's bells. So you're kind of screwed there. In terms of Espers, Golem is probably your number one bet since he does also increase defense. I would say Golem, Odin, Siren, Demon Wall, any of these sort of defensive, offensive, survivable Espers are going to be great for him. In terms of VCs, Ifrit, Odin, agility up, fire attack up, particularly when, you know, Daddy Mont comes out here in the near future. He's going to have some VCs that'll be really good in combination with Lardeau. While we don't know what Lardeau's 120 EX abilities are, no doubt it'll probably synergize pretty well with Daddy Mont as well. He's going to pair well with Luartha, with Christmas Mashery. I think personally he would be really good with Rain, and I think maybe running like a Rain Lardeau combo could be really good. Overall, do I think, you know, he's a super must-have unit? It's actually a great question. I think it depends on your playstyle. And I think for Lardeau specifically, I think the people who want to pull for Lardeau and make him good and worthwhile, they've already made up their minds to pull and they're already like ready to chase and get him. If you're like a casual player, or if you're a player who, you know, isn't going to be trying really hard, Lardeau might not be worth it for you. I think Lardeau is a unit where the more you put into him, the more he will really shine for you. You're going to really have to design your party composition around him, and he's going to kind of be the focal point of your team. Desert Maverick made a great video on Lardeau, which I will link down below in my description. I would encourage all of you guys to check it out. He really talks about some of the viable ways that he's planning on building Lardeau. If you haven't seen him, he's a content creator on Twitch and YouTube. But yeah, check it out. I definitely think it could be worth it. And I think, you know, it's hard for me to say whether you should or should not pull for Lardeau. Anyway, everyone, if you do want to support me, make sure you use my affiliate link, dig.gs/coins, dig.gs/offer as well. And as always, everyone, have a great rest of your day.